Born on August 15, 1958 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Lori Hel Bembenek grew up in an ordinary working-class family of Polish descent. From an early age, Lori displayed remarkable determination and a burning desire to make a difference in the world. Her dream was unusual for a girl at that time. She wanted to become a police officer. As a teenager, Lori developed an interest in justice and human rights, inspired by stories of valor and honor she heard in the news and saw in films. After graduating high school, Lori didn't let go of her dream. Her determination led her to join the Milwaukee Police Department in 1980 at the age of 22. It was a significant year for Lori, a time when her dreams began to take shape. However, the reality of working in law enforcement was not as romantic as she had imagined. While serving in the department, Lori faced strict discipline and unspoken rules that didn't always align with her idealistic view of the world. Quickly, Lori began to see the darker side of law enforcement. She was surrounded mostly by men, many of whom treated her with suspicion and disdain. The department's atmosphere was rife with sexism and hidden discrimination. During this time, Lori increasingly noticed that some officers broke the rules but avoided consequences due to their connections within the system. Lori's career in the police force ended as abruptly as it had begun. In August 1980, she was fired for allegedly filing a false police report. In reality, as Lori later claimed, her dismissal was a result of her outspoken protests against internal corruption and discrimination. She had filed complaints against her colleagues, pointing out their misconduct, which led to her being isolated. Her dream of becoming a police officer was shattered, and at 22, she found herself without a job or support from her former colleagues. After her dismissal, Lori went through a difficult period in her life. Losing her job with the police, she sank into depression and struggled to find new employment. During this time, she had to take whatever jobs she could to make ends meet, and her path unexpectedly led her into the world of entertainment. In October 1980, Lori landed a job at the famous Playboy Club in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Although her work primarily involved serving customers, her attractive appearance and confidence quickly made her popular with the club's patrons. She worked as a waitress in a skin-tight Playboy bunny outfit, a look that soon became part of her public image. However, Lori took no pride in this phase of her life. Her job at the Playboy Club was a means of survival during a challenging period. Inside, she still held on to her dream of a career in law enforcement, and she continued to fight for her right to justice, preparing to file a complaint over discrimination and her wrongful dismissal. This experience showed Lori just how harsh and unfair the world could be, but it also made her stronger and more determined to fight for her rights until the end. This turning point in her life became the beginning of a series of events that would forever change her destiny. After her dismissal from the police and brief stint at the Playboy Club, Lori Hel Bembenek began rebuilding her life. In December 1980, when her world seemed to be falling apart, Lori met Fred Schultz. Fred was a Milwaukee Police Department detective with 13 years of experience. He was 10 years older than Lori and had a reputation among his colleagues as a notorious partier. His love for nightclubs and dancing earned him the nickname Disco. Despite this, Fred was a seasoned detective and knew all the ins and outs of law enforcement, a world Lori was already familiar with. By that time, his marriage to Christine Schultz, his first wife, had collapsed. Their relationship had finally ended in November 1980 after 14 years together. Christine, the mother of their two sons, 11-year-old Sean and 8-year-old Shannon, had grown tired of Fred's endless infidelities. After the divorce, she gained full custody of the children and remained living in the home the couple had once shared. Fred, on the other hand, was left with significant alimony payments and had to support his sons. Lori and Fred quickly grew close. Their relationship developed rapidly, and just 1 month after meeting, they were married in January 1981. It was a whirlwind romance that seemed to pull Lori out of her depression and misfortune. Fred became more than just her husband. He represented her chance to start a new life. However, despite the passion between them, their marriage brought not only happiness, but also a host of problems related to Fred's past and financial obligations. As a detective, Fred earned a decent living, but a large portion of his income went toward alimony and supporting his former family. Each month, he paid Christine around $700, a substantial sum for that time. These obligations placed a significant strain on the young couple's budget. Lori soon realized that financial difficulties would cast a constant shadow over their relationship. By mid-1981, tension in their marriage began to escalate. In June, they were forced to move in with their friends, Judy Zess and her boyfriend, Tom Gertner, in order to cut expenses. Living in the same house as another couple only heightened the conflict related to their financial struggles. Lori became increasingly disillusioned with their marriage, as Fred continued paying alimony and could not fully support her dreams of a new life. Moreover, constant discussions about money and alimony became a growing source of irritation for Lori. Against the backdrop of these issues, Lori found herself increasingly consumed by thoughts of her failed career and the injustices she had endured. She was under constant pressure, both financial and psychological. The burden of money problems, along with the realization that she was living in the remnants of Fred's past, further eroded her patience. Despite these challenges, Lori and Fred held on to each other, trying to build a family life amidst financial woes and memories of the past. But soon their lives would take a drastic turn, a fateful event that would upend everything. On the night of May 28, 1981, what should have been an ordinary evening for the Schultz family turned into a nightmare. Around 2:15 a.m., in their southwest Milwaukee home, tragedy struck, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. That night, only Christine Schultz and her two sons, 11-year-old Sean and 8-year-old Shannon, were in the house. They were sleeping in their rooms when they were awakened by noise. Sean, the eldest, woke up first. In his half-asleep daze, he saw a strange figure in their home, a stranger with a red ponytail, wearing a green jacket and black boots that reminded him of the type worn by police officers. Sean quickly realized that this person was trying to tie him up, but he managed to break free. He screamed, waking his younger brother. The terrified boys rushed to their mother's bedroom, but it was already too late. When Sean reached her room, he found Christine lying face down on the bed, her wrists tied with ropes and a bandana wrapped around her mouth. Her body was still. Sean noticed a gunshot wound in her back, and a sense of dread overwhelmed him. He knew his mother was dead. When the police arrived at the crime scene, it was immediately clear that this was a cold-blooded murder. Christine had been shot at close range. The bullet pierced through her heart. The alarm had been raised by her boyfriend, Stuart Honeck, who had been informed of the incident by one of the boys. Investigators focused on the details left at the scene: ropes, a bandana, and other small pieces of evidence. But the main question remained: who could have committed such a horrific crime? Suspicions quickly fell on Christine's ex-husband, Fred Schultz. Although he claimed to have been on duty, it soon became apparent that his alibi was questionable. Fred admitted that instead of working, he had spent the evening drinking at a bar with his partner, Michael Durfee. While his direct involvement in the murder couldn't be proven, another shocking detail emerged. The weapon used to kill Christine was his service revolver, a .38 caliber handgun that he kept at home. The investigation took a new turn when detectives shifted their focus to Lori Bembenek. The police began to suspect that she might have used Fred's revolver to commit the murder. One of the key factors was the lack of signs of forced entry at Christine's house, suggesting that the perpetrator might have had access to a key. It was known that Fred had made a copy of Christine's house key from their eldest son, Sean's key. This could explain how the intruder entered the house unnoticed. A crucial piece of evidence was a wig found in the plumbing system of the apartment Lori and Fred shared. The fibers from the wig matched those found on Christine's body. This discovery only increased suspicion against Lori. Additionally, hair found on the bandana used to bind Christine was consistent with hair from Lori's hairbrush. These pieces of evidence became the foundation of the prosecution's case, though Lori continued to maintain her innocence. However, not everything was clear-cut. Ballistics tests conducted on Fred's revolver, while initially matching the bullet retrieved from Christine's body, were later called into question. Some experts suggested that the tests may have been flawed, raising doubts about the accuracy of the results. Serious concerns arose that the investigation might have been biased, particularly given that Lori had previously filed complaints about corruption within the Milwaukee Police Department. Despite the many questions and uncertainties, on June 24, 1981, Lori was arrested and charged with the murder of Christine Schultz. This arrest marked the beginning of a lengthy legal battle that would capture the attention of the entire nation. The public was shocked. A beautiful young woman, a former police officer and Playboy model, was now accused of a cold-blooded killing. But for Lori, this was only the beginning of her long fight for justice. Lori Bembenek's trial began in February 1982 in Milwaukee County Court, Wisconsin. The case garnered massive public interest. A former police officer accused of cold-bloodedly murdering her husband's ex-wife became the centerpiece of one of the most scandalous trials of the decade. Lori entered the courtroom under the watchful eyes of reporters and the public, eager to uncover the truth about what had happened on that fateful night in May 1981. The prosecution built its case around several key points. Prosecutors argued that Lori's motive for killing Christine Schultz was jealousy and financial troubles. They painted Lori as a woman embittered by the presence of her husband's ex-wife, who forced him to pay $700 a month in alimony, severely straining the couple's finances. Prosecutors insisted that Lori decided to murder Christine to free herself and Fred from these burdens and achieve financial independence. At the trial, much of the focus was on the physical evidence that prosecutors claimed left no doubt about Lori's guilt. First, the murder had been committed with Fred Schultz's revolver, which was kept at Lori's home and was accessible to her on the night of the murder. Prosecutors argued that Lori knew about the key to Christine's house that Fred had, allowing her to enter without any signs of forced entry. One of the most significant pieces of evidence was the wig found in the plumbing system of Lori and Fred's apartment. Fibers from the wig matched those found on Christine's body. Prosecutors argued that Lori wore this wig to disguise herself as a man with a long red ponytail, the same figure Christine's children had seen on the night of the murder. Additionally, hair found on the bandana used to bind Christine matched hair from Lori's hairbrush. Prosecutors claimed this was further proof of her involvement. The prosecution also cited witness testimonies from people who claimed to have heard Lori threaten Christine before her death. According to them, Lori had repeatedly expressed a desire to get rid of Fred's ex-wife. Lori's defense team built their case around the argument that all the evidence against her was circumstantial and insufficient for a conviction. Her lawyers argued that the investigation had been plagued by numerous irregularities and that the police might have deliberately framed Lori due to her conflicts with the department. They maintained that much of the evidence, including the wig and hair, could have been fabricated or mishandled. Specifically, the defense pointed to the possibility that evidence had been planted to divert suspicion away from the real killer. One of the defense's main arguments was that Fred Schultz himself might have been involved in the murder of his ex-wife. Lori claimed that Fred had lied to the police about his whereabouts on the night of the murder and that his alibi, being at a bar with his partner, was unreliable. However, despite this, the court did not pursue the theory of Fred's involvement, focusing instead on the charges against Lori. One of the most controversial aspects of the case revolved around the eyewitness testimonies. For instance, Christine's eldest son, Sean, had seen the intruder that night but could not definitively identify Lori as the killer. He described the person as having a red ponytail, which he assumed belonged to a man, something that did not match Lori's appearance at the time, as her hair was blonde. The defense argued that this fact pointed to a mistaken identification of the perpetrator. Nevertheless, the prosecution relied on other witness testimonies, including a statement from one of Lori's friends who claimed she had offered money for Christine's murder. On March 9, 1982, after an extensive trial, the jury delivered its verdict. Lori Bembenek was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life imprisonment at the Taycheedah Correctional Institution in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. The verdict sparked a wave of emotions in the public. Some believed that justice had been served, while others were convinced that Lori had fallen victim to a corrupt system and injustice. However, for Lori, this conviction was not the end, but the beginning of her long fight for freedom and to clear her name. In the following years, she would file several appeals, trying to have the case reviewed and the murder charges against her dropped. After her conviction in 1982, Lori Bembenek found herself in a maximum security prison, Taycheedah Correctional Institution in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. This place became her home for the next 8 years. Despite the harsh conditions, Lori didn't let prison life break her spirit. She always maintained her innocence and held on to hope for justice. In prison, Lori kept herself busy with self-education. She earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside and even started a prison newspaper, which helped her stay occupied and connected to the outside world. She drew strength from the letters of support she received and the growing media interest in her case. Lori became a figure who garnered increasing sympathy from the public. Many believed she had become a victim of an unjust judicial system. However, her appeals were consistently denied. Her defense team repeatedly sought to have the case reopened, citing new facts and questionable evidence on which the conviction was based, but they were unsuccessful. Lori felt increasingly cornered, realizing that justice might never be served. The summer of 1990 marked a turning point in Lori's life. She grew close to Dominic Guglietti, the brother of one of the inmates, who helped her devise a plan for escape. This relationship became a source of inspiration and hope for Lori's freedom. Together, they planned an escape that shocked many for its boldness and precision. On July 15, 1990, Lori made a desperate move. She escaped from Taycheedah Correctional Institution using a simple yet effective plan. While performing her prison duties in the laundry, she crawled through a window and then scaled a 7-foot barbed wire fence. At that moment, Dominic was waiting for her in a car outside the prison. This moment marked the culmination of her long efforts to break free. After the escape, Lori and Dominic fled to Canada. They hid out in Thunder Bay, Ontario, where they started a new life under false identities. However, their freedom was short-lived. Lori's story quickly caught the attention of both American and Canadian media. The program America's Most Wanted aired an episode about her, which led to an increase in citizen participation in the manhunt. Soon after, a tourist recognized Lori in a restaurant and reported her to the authorities. On October 17, 1990, Lori and Dominic were arrested by Canadian police after 3 months on the run. In Canada, Lori fiercely resisted extradition to the United States, sparking yet another wave of public interest in her case. Canadian authorities stated that Lori's transfer back to the U.S. would only be possible under the condition of a new trial. This development became a significant milestone for Lori and her legal team, as it meant her case was given a second chance. Lori's escape had turned her into a symbol of the fight against injustice. In Milwaukee, thousands of people rallied in support of her, viewing her escape as an act of defiance against a corrupt system. A few weeks after her escape, a rally was held in a city park under the slogan, "Run, Bambi, Run." Over 200 people gathered to show their solidarity with Lori, many wearing t-shirts bearing the slogan. Lori had transformed into a kind of folk hero, symbolizing the struggle for freedom and justice. The media began to cover her case from a new perspective. A growing number of people began questioning whether Lori was truly guilty or if she had been the victim of police corruption and a judicial mistake. Public support grew, and Lori came to be seen more and more as a victim of wrongful prosecution. Her escape only heightened this image, adding even more drama to her story. After her arrest in Canada in the fall of 1990, Lori Bembenek became the center of international attention. Canadian authorities were reluctant to extradite her back to the U.S. without conditions. They required that Lori be granted a new trial upon her return. This development marked a turning point in Bembenek's case. Her defenders, led by human rights lawyers, actively lobbied for a review of her case in the United States, pointing out the errors made during the original investigation and trial. On April 22, 1991, Lori voluntarily returned to the U.S., where a new phase of her fight began. Judicial authorities agreed to reopen the case, which was a significant victory for Lori and her attorneys. This meant that, perhaps a decade after Christine Schultz's murder, the truth might finally come to light. As the case was reconsidered, key pieces of evidence that had led to Lori's conviction were re-examined. The focus shifted to the ballistics tests and forensic analyses, which had raised doubts during the initial trial. New analyses suggested that the results of the previous tests might have been unreliable. Additionally, questions arose regarding the wig and hairs found at the crime scene, which had been central to the evidence against Lori. One of the key developments was the emergence of new information regarding possible sexual assault before the murder, which had not been considered in the original trial. Moreover, it was suggested that the bullet retrieved from Christine's body may have been fired from a different weapon than Fred Schultz's revolver. These doubts became the foundation for re-examining the charges, as it became clear that the investigation may have been biased and rushed. After many legal battles and the introduction of new facts, prosecutors offered Lori a deal. In December 1992, she agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge, second-degree murder. This allowed her to avoid further prison time, as her sentence was reduced to 20 years, of which she had already served 11, including her time after arrest and while in Canada. She was immediately released after striking the deal. For Lori, this was a difficult compromise. She accepted guilt for a crime she maintained she did not commit, but it granted her the long-awaited freedom. After her release, Lori tried to return to a normal life. In 1996, she moved to Washington State, where she attempted to start a new chapter, away from the public eye. In the years that followed, Lori continued to fight for complete exoneration. She filed appeals in court, seeking new genetic testing on the remaining evidence, but these efforts were rejected. She pushed for DNA testing on the hairs and other evidence that could definitively prove her innocence, but the results did not lead to a review of her case. Despite all the hardships, Lori continued to fight for her name. She wrote an autobiographical book titled Woman on Trial, in which she recounted her experiences and the challenges of her fight for justice. Her health gradually declined due to years of stress and imprisonment. In 2002, Lori completed her probation, officially closing her criminal case. Lori's health continued to decline, and in 2010, at the age of 52, she passed away from liver failure. Until her death, Lori maintained her innocence and continued to seek ways to fully clear her name. Despite all the hardships she faced, she remained a symbol of the fight for justice for many people who believed in her innocence. Lori Bembenek's story remains one of the most mysterious and controversial legal dramas in American history. Her life, from dreaming of a career in law enforcement to her dismissal, murder conviction, and dramatic prison escape, captivated the public and the media for decades. Even after her death in 2010, questions about whether she was truly guilty or if she was made a scapegoat continue to linger. On one hand, the prosecution portrayed her as a cold-blooded killer, motivated by jealousy and financial troubles. Evidence such as the wig found in her home's plumbing, matching hairs, and Fred Schultz's revolver played a decisive role in her conviction. However, on the other hand, doubts about the quality of the investigation, potential errors and falsified evidence, as well as suspicions of police corruption linked to her complaints about department misconduct, cast a shadow over the entire process. Many believed Lori had become a victim of a system seeking an easy scapegoat to close a high-profile case. Her prison escape and life on the run only deepened this duality. On one hand, her escape was seen as confirmation of her guilt, but on the other, for many, it became a symbol of a desperate struggle for justice. In 1990, the slogan, "Run, Bambi, Run," became a rallying cry for the movement for the rights of the wrongfully convicted. Public opinion was split. Some saw Lori as a dangerous criminal, while others viewed her as a victim of a broken justice system. Lori Bembenek passed away on November 20, 2010, from liver failure, leaving behind many unresolved questions. She died without ever achieving full exoneration, but her case left a lasting mark on American culture and jurisprudence. Lori's story inspired books, documentaries, and TV shows, including episodes in popular programs like America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries. Her fight for justice became an example for other cases involving claims of wrongful convictions. Her legacy continues to be discussed in legal circles as an example of how the justice system can go wrong and how important it is to incorporate new technologies, such as DNA testing, which can shed light on old cases. Her story also serves as a crucial lesson about the ways political and social factors can influence criminal proceedings. In some circles, Lori is seen as a victim of a time when women in law enforcement faced immense pressure and discrimination. Her battle against police corruption, which may have led to her prosecution, remains a symbol of resilience and determination. Lori Bembenek's case had a significant impact on public opinion. It once again raised questions about the fairness of the American justice system and highlighted potential issues within police investigations. Many began to recognize how complex the pursuit of truth can be under the pressures of public and media scrutiny. Lori's story became a catalyst for discussions about criminal justice reform, particularly in cases involving questionable evidence and potential law enforcement bias. In the legal community, Lori Bembenek's case is regarded as a lesson in the importance of safeguarding the rights of the accused and ensuring that evidence is thoroughly examined. Her case has become part of a broader conversation about judicial errors,